Hey guys, we're here with my boy Griffin. You just day 2'd YCS Niagara with Mermail, beefed up strategy recently. What's your thoughts on the deck, for the format?
I think the deck's pretty good. I think that it really needs to win the die roll, but I think that people weren't familiar with the cards for this format, so I thought it was a good pick for, well, not this format per se, but this event. So it's the first day that they're out, so I figured I'd try and catch people off guard with it. It's a long time love for this deck, so I'm really happy to have been able to make day 2 with it.
Awesome, well, let's get right to the list then.
So I'm playing 3 Neptibus. This is like the heart and soul of the deck. I'm also playing 1/1 for the Neptibus. Neptibus is like full combo on his own. He does everything from reborning cards to sending for cost. He's so phenomenal. Without Neptibus, the deck doesn't function. So he is the strongest normal summon of the deck by far, and I was happy to open him quite a few times today, or this weekend. So I'm playing 3 Dragoons. This is a soft once per turn. Search for a Sea Serpent when it's sent to the graveyard for cost. So the whole theme with the Atlantean Mermails is that they send water monsters to the graveyard for cost to activate effects. And when the Atlanteans are sent to the graveyard to activate effects, they get to go plus. So Dragoons is a soft once per turn Sea Serpent search. So you get to use this multiple times in your turn to search multiple Sea Serpents to go super, super, super advantage heavy. I'm playing 3 Shadow Squad. I think that this card is absolutely bonkers, and I want to open it as much as possible. There is a way that you can just send it off Neptibus for his Neptibus' effect, and then he special summons from the deck. But I think that sometimes it's nice to be able to open him and discard him with some of your other effects, so you don't have to completely rely on Neptibus and you can extend further. He also has an additional effect that I can discard a card to turn all my water monsters to level 7, which is super, super important, because it lets me get into my really strong rank 7 engine. Abyss Shrine, I'm also playing 3 of. This is a little bit more of a controversial take. Some people are playing 1, some people are playing 3. I think that this card is super bonkers, and I think that everybody should be playing it at 3 because it helps you extend really, really hard through hand traps. I'm also playing Coelacanth, which I'll show you in a bit, but the ability to push really hard through your the second or third hand trap because you opened this card is really, really important, and it's like is accessible as a one-of, but it's so much more important that you don't need to search it when you're already comboing. Coelacanth is also phenomenal for pushing through Droll, so this is like sort of your anti-Droll tech, and I think it's phenomenal. It also has an additional effect to banish from the graveyard on my opponent's turn and discard a card to draw a card, so it can help me find non-engine, and it can help trigger water effects on my opponent's turn. I'm also playing 3 Mermail Abyss Pike. So Abyss Pike is also a little bit controversial, but when you're playing Coelacanth, I think you have to play 3, so I'll just put the fish out now because we're talking about him. So this is Coelacanth. Abyss Pike is a pretty strong opening with Squad. I think it's a better opening than Neptibus, but it is a 2-card combo. But Coelacanth's effect is that I can discard 1 water monster, discard 1 card to special summon level 4 or lower fish from my deck, basically up to the number of free zones that I control. So I'm only playing the 3 pikes as targets, but with Abyss Shrine, if you've been hand trapped, you can then summon the Coelacanths from your deck, and then you can discard a card to push really, really far. This helps you make Toad. It helps you link off into your link package. I overall think that this is my current preference for pushing through hand traps. There are some other tech options that people are running, but I just think that this is the one thing that's the drawback is this is a horrible brick. It is like one of the only cards that has absolutely nothing in your hand, so that's a bit frustrating, but it is always discardable for your other water monster effects. I'm playing 3 Teus. Teus is a phenomenal extender. He's searchable through Abyss Shrine. When he's summoned, he gets to search a level 4 or lower Mermail monster. Which is important to note that the new Mermail cards, Shadow Squad and Abyss Shrine, are both Mermails and Atlanteans, so they're accessible off Abyss Teus. His summon is not a once per turn, but the search is, but you can put multiple of him on the board in a turn. He helps you trigger your Dragoons, your Shadow Squads. He's a really, really great extender, and he's the OG. He's the classic. I'm playing 1 Megalo. Megalo did not feel phenomenal today, but it wasn't. I would still continue to play it. Sometimes when in testing, you just need a Sea Serpent to search. Like you have a Dragoons to trigger, but you can't trigger Squads and you can't trigger Prince, so you just need something to discard your cards, and you just need a Megalo, and it's happened more than once, so I wouldn't cut it because of that. It helps that he's also level 7. My other one-ofs is I'm playing Heavy Infantry and Abyss Gund. Heavy Infantry, when it's sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster effect, destroys a card, so this is what you can use with Abyss Shrine to like pop a card in your opponent's turn. You can also tribute it with Megalo, because Megalo can attack twice if you tribute, and you can pop a card and then get to attack twice, so sometimes that helps you push for game. And Abyss Gun, when it's discarded, lets you reborn a Mermail monster from your graveyards, which helps you extend into your full combo. Lastly, I am playing what I think... Oh, sorry, I'm missing one. Woolen Glacia. This is another one of. This card is broken. People aren't playing it because they think it's a brick, and I think that that's fair. Sometimes it was a brick, but ripping 2 cards from your opponent's hand is absolutely phenomenal, especially if they like Fool Loss you. Like, this is probably like the best thing you can do under Fool Loss is just take more cards out of your opponent's hand and prevent them from like being on too many cards, so you can do your best to limit them that way. This card is a really good body to just put on the board sometimes as an extender, so I would not play without it. I think it's broken. Now, the actual best card in the deck is Deep Sea Minstrel. This card is discard itself and 1 water monster in your hand to look at your opponent's hand and then banish 1 card until the end phase. So the amount of things that this does when you open it is phenomenal. You get to look at your opponent's hand. You get to rip their best hand trap. If they don't have any hand traps, you get to take their worst card out because you could discard them with Woolen Glacia later in the turn. So it just does so much, and it cannot be understated how important it is to know what is in your opponent's hand. It helps you tailor your board. If you know you're playing against like a tier build, like a tier list, you can make Dweller instead of a second Toad. Like, it's just phenomenal to know exactly what you need to set up to beat your opponent. You can see if they have Dark Rulers, and you can set up a better board against Dark Rulers that way.
If you have a time extension,
so now I'm playing a couple one of searchable cards. So I'm playing the new Abyss Equip, the old Abyss Scale, the Mizuchi, and Virtue Stream. So I'm playing the Virtue Dragon in my extra deck. I think this card is really good because it adds layered disruption. It is like Sword Soul Blackout or Icarus attack. So being able to set up a board with an extra body, which is very easy on your full combo, to be able to pop 2 boards that doesn't lose to like Dark Ruler no more or other things in the event that somehow goes off. I just think it's really nice to have that extra level of layered disruption, and it doesn't really feel like a brick because if you are full comboing, you just don't need to search it. Abyss Scale, the Mizuchi, is really, really strong. It's accessible with your new Link 3 monster. It is like Angelic Ring for the Infernoble stuff, so it basically stops your opponent's spells on resolution. So it beats Super Poly and Dark Rule because it doesn't activate. It's really, really strong. You can set one up on your turn and then re-equip it on your opponent's turn so that you can beat like double Dark Ruler. It is an absolutely phenomenal card. I often side it out going second because it's not super useful in those situations, but I think it's mandatory to play in your main deck and always for going first. And then lastly, the Abyss Sting of Triania. I don't actually know how to pronounce this one yet, still learning. But it's like a Monster Reborn or Special Summon from the hand, and it can banish itself from the graveyard to shuffle 3 Fish, Sea Serpent, or Aqua monsters back into your deck. So I think this is really good for recursion, but it's also a really phenomenal extender, accessible off both Megalo and the Link 3 to just keep pushing through boards and set up a stronger end board. Lastly, I guess we'll just go to my non-engine. I'm playing a Call by the Grave. This card is very good. I'm a going first deck. I want to open this as much as possible. I'm playing 3 Fool Loss. This card I think is very broken, especially because for my deck, like going second is really tough. So if I can force my opponent to make a weaker board, and I get a couple other cards to extend off of, it's like, even if I get like 1 extra draw off the Fool Loss and my opponent makes a weaker board, my deck can push pretty hard, but it can push a lot easier through those boards. Like, I was able to beat a U-Bell player because he ended on like just like Phantom and then like an Imperm because he didn't want to let me draw too many cards, and I was able to push that very easily and win the game. I'm also playing 3 Ash, 3 Imperm, and then 3 Dominus Impulse. This card is really strong too. It is like, it's crazy. You can like Ash, like Branded in High Spirits, and then you can Dominus Impulse, Branded Fusion, and you can like, the one restriction is that you can't use light, wind, or earth monster effects, but we're like water tribal, so like it doesn't matter. Everything is water. The only thing we can't use after it is the Fool Loss, and usually use that first. But this card is super strong. If you can play it in your deck, I would highly recommend it. I do know that the non-engine is pretty expensive, so take that as you will, but if you can, it's great. So then for my extra deck, I'm playing 1 Zelantis. This did come up once. I was hesitant on cutting it, but it's like probably the most flexible spot. But when you're playing Coral Anemone, which we are, you can do the Anemone thing where you lock yourself into waters and then use Zelantis the board away. But because you are locked into special summoning waters, you can't summon your opponent's non-water monsters back. So you can basically like get rid of their whole board. So sometimes this is a really important push. If you can't clear enough stuff, you can just get rid of all their monsters. So I think it's helpful, but it's not mandatory. We're playing one of the new Mermail King Neptibus. So this card prevents everything underneath it from being targeted, which is really strong. And it can search the Abyss spell, equip spell, and equip it to it on your opponent's turn if you activate a Wand monster effect. So this lets you like play around Dark Ruler. It's a nice strong body that helps you, like you summon toads in this deck that prevents your toads from being targeted so that they can't be like impermed before they take game actions. If this is destroyed, it also searches for a Mermail, which is very nice. Abyss Alacia, this is the most frustrating card in this deck because it was printed in the same pack as like Cherubini and Halqifibrax and Verte Anaconda, and it sucks. It's like fine in this list, but all of its effects rely on your like it being your opponent's turn, so it's like kind of tough. It can boost your monster's attack, but it's like relatively irrelevant. It's a nice link too that we can get into easily because everything's Sea Serpent, Fish, and Aqua, so it's like something we can sometimes make. But it's got an effect to discard to search a Mermail, but only on our opponent's turn. But we can use it to discard infantry to pop a card, which is another form of like our layered interruption, which is really nice. And then if this card is destroyed by my opponent's attack, so not me crashing him, only my opponent's attack or card effect, it gets to send a card to the graveyard for cost and then reborn a water monster in defense position. But it's a really, really strong floating effect, so people often don't know that. And then they'll play into it, and then you get to go super, super plus. And then lastly, we're playing the Coral Anemone. This is mandatory for the combo. Some people are playing 2. I did cut it to 1. I have never needed a second one. I will often put it back with Toad if I think I'm going to need one, but I have never needed one, and people are only playing 1 of the new Poseidra, but I have needed that significantly more at 2 than I have needed an Anemone personally. But it is super vital for your combo, so I think that this card is super, super strong. And then for my XYZ package, I'm playing 2 of the new Poseidra Abyss, the Atlantean Dragon Lord. So you can just basically slap this on top of a Mermail or Atlantean XYZ monster, and he's like a soul charge. He reborns 3, it has to be 3, monsters that are like Sea Serpent, Fish, or Aqua monsters up to level 3. So he can just he basically puts 3 bodies back, and then you get to go super, super plus. That soul charge effect is not a once per turn, but the slap on the Mermail is. So you have to hard summon it again if you want to do that soul charge again. I've never done that, but it would be very cool. He's got an additional effect, which is super, super strong, is that it only works on your opponent's turn or if they control a card. You can send a water monster from your deck to the graveyard for cost, and then return non-targeted return up to 3 cards your opponent controls to the hand. So it's phenomenal for pushing going second. This card is super, super strong. I highly, highly recommend playing multiple because I've needed it, but if you only want to play 1, I think that you can get away with that. I'm also playing 2 of the Mermail Abyss Gaios. Abyss Gaios is really cool because it's like, it can be you often use this to just get into the Poseidra, but it can be an engine piece, so or like an interruption. So you can detach a material to anything that on your opponent's field that has less attack than it. Its effects are negated for the rest of the turn, and it's a quick effect, so it can be used as like an imperm on your opponent's turn, or if you're going second, you can summon this, detach a material, and then negate your opponent's whole board, and then summon this on top, and then detach this and the other material to like return up to 3 cards. It's super, super strong for helping to clear. The new XYZ coming out in like January, I think I would take 1 Gaios out and put the new XYZ in instead. But Gaios is an OG, I love him. He also has like a secret floodgate effect where he stops level 5 or higher monsters from attacking. And people forget about that all the time, and it can save you games. I am playing 2 Bahamut Shark, and I am playing 2 Totally Awesome. You can make 2 Bahamut Shark and 2 Totally Awesome in your combo, and 2 is better than 1, and Toad is really strong, and we are one of the few decks that still have access to like a really strong and accessible Omni Negate, so I would highly recommend playing it while we can. If it lasts forever, if it never gets banned, that's perfect. I don't think it will, but it's good. It's good to be able to play 2. Also playing La Virtue Dragon. I like this in my combo. It helps search the Virtue Stream. If you soul charge, you can summon 2 level 3s and then summon this, and you can detach a material as part of the effect and either move it to another XYZ monster. So if you can like reborn Gaios with Gund, you can move the La Virtue Dragon material to the Gaios so he has an imperm alive, or you can add a water monster from your graveyard to your hand, which I often do, so I can discard Dragoons to draw a card, search a heavy infantry, and then use the Alacia to discard the heavy infantry to pop. I think this card is really good. You can also summon it off Bahamut Shark, which I have done, and it still gets like all of its effects because you get the effect on summon, and then you can detach a material from the Bahamut Shark to either use both of its effects. My last XYZ is Abyss Dweller. I didn't summon this as much as I wanted to. Some games I think I would have won if I did summon it, but I couldn't figure out how to get into it with the hand or the situation I was in. But this card is phenomenal if like you're playing a tier or like Branded or even Fire King. You can just stop them from playing. It's really, really strong. And because we're a water deck, we actually get the 500 attack bonus, which is really, really cool. And then lastly, my last extra deck card is Trishula. I summon this very, very rarely, but I do think that it's important. Sometimes you discard something off your opponent's, like off Remolin Glacia that you do not want your opponent to have in the graveyard. So you can summon Trish to take another card out of their hand and that card out of the graveyard, and then you still end on double Toad and the spell negate. So I think that it's like, it comes up less often, but I think that it's really, really good to play just as the 1-of. Then lastly, my sideboard, I am playing 3 Molcharmi Perilia. I sided it in pretty much every game going second. You could main it, but I think that I was happy where it was in the sideboard. I'm playing 3 Typhoon. I don't know if I play Typhoon again. It did come up in the Snake Eyes Mina match, and it did help me slow them down, especially because I can use it going first. If you're unfamiliar with what Typhoon does, I can target a face-up spell and trap and destroy it, and if I control those spell and traps and my opponent controls 2, you can activate it from your hand on your opponent's like turn 1. So if they're like activate the Alzamina fusion spell and they're going to send Deception, you can basically get rid of the Deception, and it puts them on better have OSS, otherwise the fusion dies. And every time I did that, my opponent had OSS. So that was really frustrating, but I still think it's good. I might cut it, but it performed okay today. And then the last of my sideboard is like not too complicated. I'm playing 3 evenly matched. This card is just pretty good going second. I did like it. I was hesitant to side it in sometimes because like some of the boards just set up Omni Negates and you can't really use it, but when you have the Molcharmis, sometimes you draw multiples of these, and then it feels pretty good. I'm playing a Gozen match. We are only waters. We might as well. It's kind of sacky, but when it resolves in the matchups, it's like the decks are not one attribute. It's very, very strong. And then my last 5 cards are 2 Area the Water Channeler, 2 Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, and 1 Gamma Seal. So the theory behind this is that going first, Spooky Dogwood is searchable by either Area or for Pike for time situations, and Gamma Seal is searchable by Area going second. And Area discards itself and another water monster to search anything that is equal or higher level than the other monster discarded. So it can help you trigger your Dragoons, and then you can search your Gamma Seal. So you can go plus, and then you can get rid of a problematic monster. I was a little afraid of tower monsters. I think this deck has a bit of a hard time outing things like Chaos Angel. So I wanted to make sure that we had like an out to that. And then I wanted to play not 1 Spooky Dogwood, because the situations in which you go in time, but you're going second, you can't search the Spooky Dogwood. So it doesn't really make sense to only play 1, but I was a little tight on space, so I ended up only having room for 2. Overall, I don't know if I love my sideboard. There might be some things that I would want to change, but ultimately I'm really happy with how the deck performed. I'm really excited to have made day 2, and I water forever.
Well, congrats again on day 2. Thanks for the profile. Any shout outs?
Yes, I would like to shout out my friend Landon for helping me test a little bit. I would like to shout out you for letting me on the channel. And I would absolutely like to shout out my boy Justin, who's right here, for being my primary testing partner and letting me Mulan Glacia rip 2 cards out of his hand like 50 times. I don't think I would have made day 2 without him especially. So thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.